Jim Jones, the leader of an American religious cult.
Jim Jones led over 900 of his followers into the mass suicide.
One of the biggest mass suicides in recorded history.
On 19th November 1978, the world woke up to one of the most horrific, most outrageous, most shocking acts of mass suicide ever. Over 900 people, that is close to 1,000 human lives, were lost. This was at the command of a charismatic leader, a spiritual authority who promised utopia but instead delivered death. This is the story of Jim Jones.
If we can't live in peace, then let's die in peace.
Jim Jones was born on 13th May 1931 in rural Indiana to parents who exhibited narcissistic tendencies. He was frequently beaten up by his father at the slightest offense. On the other side, his mother overwhelmed him with constant naggings about becoming a somebody in life. Jones was a regular churchgoer from a very young age. He had a strong desire to be a pastor and even began to practice preaching in private. Paradoxically, neighbors later intimated that he had peculiar habits such as committing sacrilegious pranks and antisocial tendencies. It is not uncommon for psychopaths to have had troubled childhood backgrounds. Following his parents' divorce in 1945, 14-year-old Jones began working in a hospital as a healthcare assistant to support his mother as relatives distanced themselves. In school, he was regarded quiet and seriously focused in fulfilling his desire to join the medical field as a doctor, though he later gave up on this dream, pursuing a degree in secondary education instead. In 1952, Jones had his first experience on the pulpit as a student pastor in the Methodist Church, a position he lost not long after on allegations of embezzling church funds. He thereafter joined Pentecostal Assemblies of God Church.
I didn't feel accepted. I joined a Pentecostal church because they were the most despised. They were the rejects of the community. I found immediate acceptance, as much love as I could interpret love.
He was to later leave the church to establish wings of revival ministries. He also joined the Latter Rain movement, a post-World II revival movement among Pentecostal churches. It is here that he met a healing evangelist, William Branham. Together, they had very successful revival crusades. Having tasted the power that comes with huge crusades, it was time to rebrand his poorly performing Wings of Healing Church. And this is how the People's Temple was born in 1955. Jim Jones came up with a perfect plan to attract a large following. This was through sermons on tolerance, social responsibility, and community service.
Represent divine principle, divine socialism. I will not pass away, but I shall stand throughout the endless ages of time.
During the 50s and 60s, racial segregation was widespread. Jones capitalized on this by publicly expressing his discontent with various mainstream churches for racism, thus gaining more followers under his wings. He empathized with the downtrodden non-whites, going as far as having a multiracial family by adopting children of various races. He quickly gained a reputation of being a charismatic, philanthropic churchman who claimed to have psychic powers, such as the ability to foretell the future and miraculously heal the sick.
You have a bad spinal condition?
Yes,
And your hip is injured.
yes.
Step from your wheelchair. Begin to step from your wheelchair. Try it. Just try it. Just try it. We have nothing to lose. We have no face to lose because we've said we're no panacea. But I have seen more healings here than I've ever seen any place.
He believed that capitalism caused an unhealthy balance in the world, where the rich became richer and the poor became poorer. He didn't shy away from preaching this doctrine, thus garnering even more converts. Cults prey on people's vulnerabilities, offering them a sense of belonging and community, mostly by isolation and manipulation.
You believe in me, I will cause the kingdoms of this racist society to become the kingdoms of socialistic freedom. I will cause your desert to blossom as a rose.
While the People's Temple was active in humanitarian causes, John's treatment towards his followers was often less than humane. Congregants were regularly humiliated, beaten, blackmailed, and brainwashed into signing over their possessions to the church. He successfully convinced his members that leaving the church would have dire consequences. He first got them to join the church, cemented their commitment by convincing them to sell their possessions and turn over the money to the church. He instilled fear by insinuating that they were under political attack and that someday they would need to relocate to a safe promised land where they would live together as one big happy family far away from their enemies.
We also have to be prepared to go to other places in the world if a dictatorship takes over. Because I told you that not one of my children is going to end up in a concentration camp. I said they'll have to kill us all first.
As the church grew increasingly successful, scrutiny over John's and his practices grew as well. Besides maltreating his members, there were rumors that he used alcohol, drugs, and sexually molested his congregants of both genders. When an investigation into his healing rituals was about to begin, it was time to move. This was in August 1977. A 24-hour boat trip plus miles in a truck, they were not ready for the rude awakening awaiting them in their purported paradise. This is Guyana, a South American country where the People's Temple's members were supposed to live as a brotherhood away from their adversaries. Ironically, upon arrival, all their belongings, including travel documents, were confiscated. They were subjected to harsh labor in the fields. Severe punishment was served on anyone who defied any rules. There was no escape strategy as the camp was surrounded by armed guards. After long, laborious days, they would be rounded out of their beds very early and forced to sit in a pavilion for hours, listening to their leader rant and ramble about enemies coming after them. Meanwhile, back in Indiana, frantic relatives raised concerns over the welfare of their folks since all their communications went unanswered. On the other side, Jones was growing increasingly paranoid due to the media's scrutiny over the temple's suspicious activities. This paranoia was heightened by his frequent drug consumption. So, here is Jim Jones with his hundreds of followers, isolated deep in the jungle. They've been enslaved with no escape route. They're physically and emotionally drained to fight for their survival. At this point, whatever the master commands goes. Jim Jones realized that it was a matter of time before the authorities closed in on him. For this, he had a solid plan. He started carrying out mock drills in preparation of a possible attack. He convinced his gullible followers that if their enemies succeeded in attacking them, they better commit suicide and go to heaven as much as, instead of enduring a lifetime of torture in jail.
Some people see a great deal of God in my body. They see Christ in me.
To test their loyalty, he started conducting mock drills whereby he would give them drinks purporting to be poison. They complied. On 7th September 1978, Congressman Ryan was sent to Jonestown to investigate the allegations. Him and his team were brutally attacked. 8 days later, Jones, evidently worn out and drained by everything that was going on around him, decided to put an end to it all. It was time to execute his drills. He brought Flavor Aid, a non-carbonated soft drink, but this time laced with real poison. He ordered everyone to drink it. Those who objected had it ejected into their system. Again, armed guards prevented escape until it was their turn to drink the poison. Everyone in the compound died, lest for a few individuals who managed to sneak out. Jim Jones died from a bullet wound. To date, it has not been established whether it was self-afflicted or not. On 18th November 1978, over 900 bodies lay sprawled over Jonestown. This was at the command of the spiritual leader who promised utopia but in the end served death.